The worst part about owning a house in Vermont during winter wasn't the cold or the snow or even the heating bills that made my bank account cry. It was the HOA president standing on my front porch at 7 in the morning, pointing at the roof with her manicured finger like she was directing an orchestra of complaints. I opened the door wider, letting the cold air rush in as I took in the sight of Patricia Whitmore, our neighborhood's self-appointed queen of property values and professional pain in everyone's side. She wore a white puffer jacket that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and her blonde hair was styled in that specific way that screamed, "I need to speak to your manager," from 3 blocks away. "Good morning, Patricia," I said, keeping my voice neutral. My name is Peter Vaughn, and I'd lived in this Burlington suburb for 5 years now, long enough to know that when Patricia showed up unannounced, it meant trouble. "Peter, we have a situation," she announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "The community center has severe ice dams, and we need them cleared immediately." I blinked at her, still trying to wake up properly. My coffee sat abandoned on the kitchen counter, probably getting cold while I dealt with whatever crisis Patricia had manufactured this time. "Okay, that's unfortunate. Did you call a roofing company?" She waved her hand dismissively. "That's why I'm here. You're a roofer, aren't you? The HOA needs you to take care of it." "I own a roofing company, yes," I confirmed slowly, "and I'd be happy to give you a quote for the work." Patricia's expression shifted slightly, like she'd tasted something sour. "A quote? Peter, this is for the community, your community. We all need to pitch in and help maintain our neighborhood facilities." The pieces clicked together in my mind. She didn't want to hire me. She wanted me to do it for free. I felt my jaw tighten as I processed this assumption. "Patricia, roofing is my job. It's how I pay my bills and, coincidentally, my HOA fees. I can't just work for free." "It's not for free. It's community service," she countered, her voice taking on that particular edge that suggested she was used to getting her way. "The HOA budget is quite tight this quarter, and we simply can't afford professional rates right now. But you live here. You should want to contribute." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. The morning air bit at my skin, but I wasn't about to invite Patricia inside for this conversation. "I already contribute through my HOA fees, the same fees that are supposed to cover building maintenance." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Those fees cover many things, Peter. We have landscaping, snow removal for the common areas, insurance, administrative costs. The community center roof wasn't in the budget forecast." "Ice dams happen every winter in Vermont," I pointed out. "They should absolutely be in the budget forecast." "Are you refusing to help your neighbors?" Patricia asked, and I could hear the threat underlying her words. This was how she operated. Make unreasonable demands, then frame anyone who pushed back as selfish or difficult. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I'm saying that if the HOA wants professional roofing work done, they need to pay professional rates. I'll give you a fair quote, the same I'd give any client, but I'm not working for free." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "I see. How disappointing. I thought you'd be more community-minded, Peter." "I'll have to bring this up at the next board meeting." She turned and walked away before I could respond, her boots crunching through the snow on my walkway. I watched her get into her spotless white SUV and drive off toward the community center, probably already planning how to make my life difficult. I closed the door and headed back to the kitchen, where my coffee had indeed gone cold. Dumping it in the sink, I started making a fresh pot while thinking about the situation. Ice dams were serious business. They formed when heat from a building melted snow on the roof, which then refroze at the edges, creating barriers that trapped water. That trapped water could seep under shingles, damage the roof structure, cause leaks, and lead to thousands of dollars in water damage if left untreated. If the community center had severe ice dams, they needed professional attention soon. But that didn't mean I was going to donate my time and expertise just because Patricia thought she could guilt-trip me into it. My phone rang while I was pouring my second cup of coffee. The caller ID showed Jake Morrison, my business partner and lead crew supervisor. "Hey Jake, what's up?" "Morning, Pete. Got a question for you. Just ran into Patricia Whitmore at the gas station. She asked if I'd be willing to help with some roofing work at the community center, said it would be a favor for the neighborhood." "What's that about?" I groaned. "She came by my house this morning demanding I clear ice dams on the community center roof for free. When I said I'd need to charge professional rates, she got pissy about it. Now she's apparently going around trying to recruit my own crew behind my back." Jake laughed. "Yeah, I figured it was something like that. I told her I don't do anything without running it through you first. She didn't look happy about it." "Patricia rarely looks happy about anything that doesn't go exactly her way," I said. "Thanks for the heads up. If anyone else from the crew mentions it, let them know the same thing. This is business, not charity work." "You got it, boss. Though I gotta say, if those ice dams are as bad as she was describing, someone needs to handle them soon. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen if chunks of ice start falling on people." He had a point. The community center hosted events, kids programs, and various neighborhood gatherings. If someone got hurt because the HOA was too cheap to properly maintain the building, there would be hell to pay. But that still wasn't my problem to solve for free. "She has my number," I said. "When she's ready to discuss actual business terms, I'm available." I spent the rest of the day handling actual paying jobs. We had 2 residential clients who needed ice dam prevention work, and 1 commercial property that wanted a full roof inspection after the heavy snowfall we'd gotten the previous week. It was good, honest work, and nobody expected me to do it for free. That evening, I got home to find a formal letter from the HOA in my mailbox. I didn't even need to open it to know what it was about, but I did anyway, standing in my kitchen while reading Patricia's professionally worded passive-aggressive nonsense. The letter informed me that the HOA board would be discussing community participation expectations at their next meeting, scheduled for the following Tuesday evening. It strongly encouraged my attendance. There was also a subtle implication that homeowners who didn't contribute to community welfare might face increased scrutiny regarding their property compliance with HOA regulations. I tossed the letter on my counter and called my friend Dennis, who happened to be a lawyer. We'd gone to high school together, and he'd helped me navigate some contract issues when I first started my business. "Pete, my man, how's life in HOA hell?" Dennis answered on the second ring. "Getting more interesting by the day," I said. "Quick question. Can an HOA force me to provide professional services for free?" "Absolutely not." "What's Patricia done now?" I filled him in on the situation, including the thinly veiled threat in the letter. Dennis listened without interrupting, though I could hear him typing occasionally. "Okay, so here's the deal," Dennis said when I finished. "The HOA can't compel you to provide free labor or services, period. Your HOA fees are your financial contribution to the community. Those fees fund maintenance and operations. If they've mismanaged their budget, that's their problem, not yours." That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure. "The bit about increased scrutiny is concerning, though," Dennis continued. "That's borderline retaliation. If they start hitting you with frivolous violations or fines because you won't donate your professional services, you'd have grounds for legal action. Document everything, Pete. Save that letter, keep records of any interactions with Patricia or the board. Will do. Thanks, Dennis. Anytime. And hey, if this escalates, call me. I love putting HOA boards in their place when they overstep. The next few days passed without incident, which should have been my first warning that something was brewing. Patricia didn't do silence. She did calculated, methodical campaigns to get her way. On Saturday morning, I woke up to find a formal violation notice stuck to my front door. According to the notice, my house number sign was non-compliant with community aesthetic standards and needed to be replaced within 7 days to avoid a fine. I stared at the notice, then at my house numbers, which I'd installed 3 years ago. They were brushed nickel, clearly visible and identical to about half the houses on my street. There was nothing wrong with them. I took photos of the notice and my house numbers, then walked down my street taking pictures of everyone else's numbers. Sure enough, at least 8 other houses had the exact same style I did. I sent all the photos to Dennis with a text explaining the situation. His response came back within minutes. That's retaliation. They're harassing you. Don't replace anything. Let them try to fine you. We'll respond with a letter. Sunday brought another surprise. I was doing some paperwork in my home office when I heard raised voices outside. Looking out the window, I saw Patricia standing in front of my house with 2 other board members, Cynthia Reed and Donald Harper. They appeared to be documenting something, taking photos with their phones. I grabbed my jacket and headed outside. "Can I help you with something?" Patricia turned, her expression all fake concern. "Peter, we're conducting a routine property inspection. Several homeowners have expressed concerns about maintenance standards in the neighborhood." "Several homeowners or just you?" I asked, keeping my tone level. "And I don't recall receiving notice about any inspection." "The HOA covenants allow for exterior inspections of all properties," Cynthia said primly. She was in her late 50s, with steel gray hair and a perpetual expression like she smelled something unpleasant. "We don't need to provide advance notice for exterior observations from public areas." "Observe away then," I said, "but I want to make it clear that this is noted and documented. You're here the day after I received a bogus violation notice, which came less than a week after I refused to donate free professional services to the HOA. The timing is interesting." Donald, who'd been quiet until now, shifted uncomfortably. He was probably the most reasonable person on the board, which wasn't saying much. "Look, Peter, this doesn't have to be adversarial. Maybe we can all sit down and discuss the community center situation like adults." "I'm happy to discuss business," I said. "I've been waiting for someone to call me about a legitimate quote. Instead, I'm getting harassment about house numbers and surprise property inspections. That's not how professional relationships work." Patricia's fake concern melted away, revealing irritation underneath. "You're being dramatic. We're simply doing our jobs as board members. The fact that you're interpreting routine community management as harassment says more about your attitude than our actions." "My attitude is that I run a business and expect to be paid for my work," I replied. "That's not unreasonable." "What's unreasonable is expecting free professional services and then retaliating when someone says no." "Nobody is retaliating against anyone," Patricia snapped. "Your persecution complex isn't our problem, Peter. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have other properties to inspect." They left, but not before taking several more photos of my house. I immediately went inside and sent another update to Dennis, along with photos of the 3 board members in front of my house. Dennis called me back within an hour. "Pete, this is escalating fast. I'm going to draft a cease and desist letter regarding the harassment. In the meantime, I want you to install a doorbell camera and maybe a couple of other cameras covering your property. Document everything. You think it'll get worse? I think Patricia is used to steamrolling people, and you're not cooperating with her script. People like that don't respond well to boundaries. Better safe than sorry. I spent the rest of Sunday installing cameras. I got a video doorbell and 2 additional cameras covering my driveway and backyard. The whole setup synced to my phone, so I'd get alerts for any motion or activity. Monday morning, I was at a job site when my phone started buzzing with camera alerts. I checked the feed and saw a city inspector's vehicle parked in front of my house. A woman with a clipboard was walking around my property, taking notes and photos. I immediately called my crew supervisor. "Jake, I need you to handle the rest of this job. I've got to get home now." "Everything okay? HOA problems. I'll explain later." I made it home in 20 minutes, driving faster than I probably should have. The inspector was still there, now examining my trash cans at the side of my house. "Excuse me," I called out, walking up quickly. "Can I ask what you're inspecting?" The woman turned, looking surprised. She was in her 30s, wearing a city jacket and holding an official-looking clipboard. "Are you the homeowner?" "I am. Peter Vaughn. I'm Inspector Carol Martinez with the City Building Department. We received a complaint about unpermitted work on this property, possible structural modifications. I'm here to investigate." My stomach dropped. "What unpermitted work? I haven't done any modifications to this house in over 2 years, and everything I did then was fully permitted." Inspector Martinez consulted her clipboard. "The complaint alleges recent roof modifications and possible structural changes to the exterior." "That's completely false," I said firmly. "I own a roofing company. I know the permitting requirements inside and out. I haven't touched my roof recently except for basic maintenance like cleaning gutters. No modifications whatsoever." The inspector studied me, then looked back at my house. "Mind if I take a look at your roof access? I need to verify the complaint one way or another." "Not at all." "Let me get my ladder from the garage." We spent the next 30 minutes going over my roof, attic access, and exterior. Inspector Martinez was thorough but fair, and by the end, it was clear there was no unpermitted work of any kind. "Mr. Vaughn, I'm going to file this as an unfounded complaint," she said, making notes on her clipboard. "Your roof shows standard wear consistent with its age, and I see no evidence of any recent modifications, permitted or otherwise. Whoever filed this complaint either had bad information or deliberately wasted city resources." "Inspector Martinez, I appreciate your thoroughness," I said. "For your report, you should know that I recently refused to provide free professional roofing services to my HOA, and since then, I've been receiving what appears to be retaliatory harassment. Bogus violation notices, surprise property inspections by board members, and now this false complaint to the city. I have documentation of all of it," she frowned. "That's concerning. For what it's worth, the complaint came in anonymously through our online portal. But the timing you're describing does seem suspicious. You might want to consult with an attorney if this continues." "Already on it," I assured her. After Inspector Martinez left, I called Dennis immediately and recounted the whole incident. I could hear his keyboard clicking as he took notes. "Okay, this crosses a line," Dennis said. "Filing false reports with city officials is serious. I'm escalating my letter. Instead of just a cease and desist, I'm going to outline the pattern of harassment and make it clear that continued retaliation will result in legal action. I'm also going to request all HOA communications and board meeting minutes related to you or the community center situation." "Will that actually stop them?" "Depends. Some HOA boards back off when they realize there are legal consequences." Others double down because they're convinced they are right and you're the villain. Given Patricia's personality, I'd guess she'll dig in, at least initially. Dennis was right. Tuesday evening rolled around, bringing the scheduled HOA board meeting. I decided to attend, curious to see how Patricia would spin the situation to the other homeowners. The community center meeting room was moderately full, maybe 30 people out of the 100 or so homes in our development. Most were the usual suspects, retired folks and busybodies who attended every meeting. I recognized a few neighbors and exchanged nods with Marcus Webb, who lived 3 houses down and had his own history of conflicts with Patricia. Patricia called the meeting to order at 7 sharp, going through the standard opening procedures and approval of previous minutes. Then she got to new business, and I felt the energy in the room shift. As many of you know, we're facing a serious maintenance issue with the community center roof, Patricia began, her voice taking on that concerned citizen tone she deployed when she wanted sympathy. We have extensive ice dams that pose both structural risks and safety hazards. Unfortunately, efforts to address this situation have been complicated by certain individuals who place personal profit above community welfare. I raised my hand. Patricia's eyes flicked to me, and I saw irritation flash across her face before she masked it with false politeness. Yes, Peter. I'd like to clarify that situation for everyone, since you're clearly talking about me, I said, standing up so everyone could see me. The HOA president came to my house and demanded I clear the ice dams for free. When I offered to provide professional services at standard rates, like I would for any client, she refused and has since been engaging in what appears to be retaliatory harassment. I've received bogus violation notices, been subjected to surprise property inspections, and someone even filed a false complaint with the city building department claiming I did unpermitted work. All of this happened within a week of me declining to donate free labor. Murmurs rippled through the room. Several people turned to look at Patricia, whose face had flushed red. That is a gross mischaracterization, Patricia said sharply. The HOA has been conducting routine compliance checks across the community. If you've received violation notices, it's because your property was out of compliance. The fact that you're interpreting standard HOA operations as harassment is concerning. Marcus Webb raised his hand. Patricia, I have the exact same house numbers as Peter. I've had them for 5 years. I didn't get a violation notice. Why did he get one if it's routine compliance? Each property is evaluated individually, Cynthia chimed in. Different contexts, different standards. That's not how rules work, another homeowner called out. Same violation or no violation. You can't apply standards selectively. The meeting was getting away from Patricia's control, and I could see her scrambling to regain it. We're getting off topic. The issue at hand is the community center roof, which requires immediate attention. Does anyone have constructive suggestions? Yeah. Hire a roofing company and pay them, someone said, getting a few laughs. The budget doesn't allow for the rates we've been quoted, Donald said, speaking up from his seat on the board table. We've gotten 3 quotes so far, and they're all between $8,000 and $12,000. That would require either a special assessment or dipping into our reserve fund, which we're hesitant to do. How much is in the reserve fund? I asked. Patricia hesitated. That information is available in the annual budget report, which most people here probably haven't read, Marcus said. Just tell us, Patricia, what's the reserve balance? Approximately $47,000, she admitted reluctantly. But that fund is meant for genuine emergencies. Ice dams causing potential structural damage and creating safety hazards sounds like a genuine emergency, I pointed out. That's literally what reserve funds are for. Unexpected maintenance issues. I'm not comfortable depleting our reserves for something that should have been handled through community cooperation, Patricia insisted. If everyone pitched in, if those with relevant skills were willing to help their neighbors, we wouldn't need to spend thousands of dollars. Patricia, I'll make you a deal, I said, an idea forming. I'll give the HOA the best rate I possibly can. Actual cost for materials and equipment rental, plus half my normal labor rate. But I want it in writing that this is a paid professional contract, and I want all the retaliatory harassment to stop immediately. No more bogus violations, no more surprise inspections, no more false complaints to the city. Deal. She stared at me, clearly torn between her desire to save money and her unwillingness to admit she'd been wrong. That's still several $1,000s. It's also half of what you'd pay anyone else, and the work needs to be done. You can accept my offer, or you can keep shopping around and hope the roof doesn't start leaking before you find someone cheaper. Or you can authorize a special assessment and have every homeowner here pay extra this quarter. The room erupted in reactions. Most people seemed in favor of accepting my offer, especially the part about not doing a special assessment. A few tried to argue that I should go even lower, do it at cost with no labor charges at all, but Marcus shut that down quickly. The man runs a business, Marcus said firmly. He's already offering a significant discount. That's more than fair. I move that the board accept Peter's offer and hire him for the community center roof work. I second. Another homeowner called out. Patricia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. This is highly irregular. Contract decisions are normally made by the board, not by general membership vote. Then put it to a board vote, someone suggested. Donald cleared his throat. I vote we accept Peter's offer. It's fair, it's significantly cheaper than our other quotes, and it gets the problem solved quickly. The other board member who hadn't spoken much, Richard Talbot, nodded. I agree. Let's accept the offer and move on. All eyes turned to Patricia and Cynthia. Patricia's jaw was tight, but she must have realized she was cornered. Fine, we'll accept, but I want a detailed written quote with a breakdown of all costs. You'll have it tomorrow, I promised. And I'll need that agreement in writing about ending the harassment. There has been no harassment, Patricia said coldly, but I'm sure we can include language about maintaining professional boundaries during the contract work. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was something. The meeting moved on to other topics, and I left shortly after, feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe this would actually resolve things. I spent that evening drafting a detailed quote for the community center work. I broke down material costs, equipment rental, labor hours, and provided a timeline. True to my word, I charged actual cost for materials and half my normal labor rate. The total came to $4,800, which was honestly a steal for the scope of work required. I emailed the quote to the HOA board that night, copying Dennis on it just to have documentation. Within an hour, I got a response from Patricia with a contract proposal. I forwarded it to Dennis before even reading the whole thing. Dennis called me 10 minutes later. Pete, don't sign this. What's wrong with it? About 30 different things, but the highlights are brutal. They're trying to make you personally liable for any damage discovered during the work, even pre-existing damage. There's a clause that says you'll indemnify the HOA against any and all claims related to the roof for the next 5 years. And my favorite part, it says you agree that the work is being done as a community service contribution, and you waive any right to place a lien on the property for non-payment. They're trying to get me to work for free after all, I said, anger building, just with extra steps. Exactly. I'll draft a response with a clean contract. Standard contractor terms, reasonable liability limitations, normal payment schedule. If they won't sign that, walk away. You don't need this headache. Dennis sent over his version of the contract by midnight. It was fair and straightforward, the kind of agreement I used with all my commercial clients. Payment due in thirds, 1/3 upfront, 1/3 at midpoint, final third on completion. Standard warranty on workmanship. Reasonable liability provisions that didn't make me responsible for things beyond my control. I sent it to the HOA board Wednesday morning with a simple message. Here's the contract I'm willing to sign. These are standard industry terms. Let me know if you'd like to proceed. The response took 3 days, which should have been my second warning. When Patricia finally replied, it was with a curt message saying the board had decided to seek other contractors after all, as my terms were unreasonable and not in the community's best interests. I forwarded the email chain to Dennis. Well, I tried. You did more than try. You offered them an excellent deal and they chose to play games instead. Not your problem anymore, Pete. Let them find someone else. Except, as I discovered the following week, they weren't actually finding anyone else. I ran into Donald at the grocery store and he looked stressed. Peter, hey, he said, stopping his cart near mine in the produce section. I wanted to apologize for how the contract situation played out. Patricia and Cynthia voted down your proposal. I was outvoted. It's fine, Donald. If they don't want to work with me, that's their choice. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. The thing is, they're not working with anyone. Patricia's convinced she can find someone to do it cheaper, and Cynthia backs her on everything. Meanwhile, the ice dams are getting worse. I went by the community center yesterday, and there's visible damage now. Water stains on the interior walls, some ceiling tiles showing moisture. That's not good, I said. Once water gets inside, you're looking at potential mold issues, structural damage, all sorts of expensive problems. I know. And if someone gets hurt because we didn't maintain the building properly, the HOA could be liable. I tried explaining that to Patricia, but she insists we can handle it more economically. Donald, I'm going to be straight with you. I offered them half my normal rate out of goodwill, even after the harassment. That was my olive branch. If Patricia wants to keep playing games, that's on the board. But when things get worse and she comes back asking for help, my price is going to be full rate, plus a rush fee because it'll be more difficult to fix the longer it's left. Donald nodded tiredly. That's fair. I'll try to talk some sense into them, but I'm not optimistic. 2 weeks went by. February in Vermont was brutal that year, with temperatures swinging wildly between bitter cold and just above freezing. Perfect conditions for ice dams to worsen. I focused on my regular work and tried not to think about the community center roof, though I drove past it occasionally and could see the ice buildup getting worse. Then I got a call from my insurance agent, Linda Chen. Peter, I need to ask you about something odd. I got a claim inquiry from your HOA's insurance company. They're asking whether you did any recent work on the community center and if you're covered under your liability policy for that property. I haven't done any work there, I said immediately. The HOA asked me to. I provided a quote. They rejected my contract terms. Why are they asking about me? I don't know, but it's concerning. It sounds like they might be setting up to claim you're somehow responsible for the roof damage. Do you have documentation that you never did the work? I have emails showing the whole conversation, including them rejecting my contract proposal. Send me copies of everything. I'm going to reply to their insurance company with a clear statement that you performed no work on that property and have no liability related to it. This smells like someone trying to manufacture a claim. I sent Linda all the emails, then called Dennis to update him. His reaction was immediate and angry. They're trying to set you up as a scapegoat. The damage is getting worse. They don't want to pay to fix it properly, so they're going to claim you damaged the roof somehow. It's fraud, and it's stupid fraud because you have documentation showing you were never hired. What do I do? Right now, nothing. Linda will handle the insurance inquiry. I'm going to send the HOA board a letter making it crystal clear that you did no work on their property. You have no connection to the roof damage, and any attempts to claim otherwise will be met with immediate legal action. This is getting serious, Pete. The letter went out that afternoon. I expected some kind of response, but instead I got silence. The entire following week passed without any contact from the HOA. No bogus violations, no surprise inspections, no strange complaints, just silence. It made me nervous. The other shoe dropped on a Thursday evening in early March. I was home after a long day, eating leftover pizza and watching hockey when someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. I checked my doorbell camera first and saw Marcus Webb, looking agitated. I hurried to open the door. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "Have you been to the community center lately?" he asked, slightly out of breath like he'd been running. "No, why?" "Part of the roof collapsed this afternoon. Nobody was hurt, thank God, because there wasn't any event scheduled. But Peter, it's bad. And Patricia is telling everyone who'll listen that you refuse to help fix the problem and this is your fault." I grabbed my jacket. "Show me." We drove to the community center in Marcus's truck. Even from the parking lot, I could see the damage. A section of the roof had caved in, probably under the weight of ice and trapped water. Emergency services tape cordoned off part of the building, and a few neighbors stood around gawking at the damage. Patricia was there, along with Cynthia and several other homeowners. When she saw me, her expression turned triumphant. "Peter Vaughn," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I hope you're satisfied. This is what happens when people put profits before community. This is what happens when an HOA board refuses to properly maintain community property," I countered. "I offered to fix the ice dams at half my normal rate. You rejected my contract and decided to play games instead. This isn't on me, Patricia. This is on the board's failure to act. You tried to extort the HOA with unreasonable contract terms," she shot back. "I provided standard industry contract terms, the same ones I use with every client. You wanted me to sign a document that made me liable for things I had no control over. That's not reasonable, and you know it." A few people were recording the exchange on their phones. I tried to stay calm, aware that anything I said could end up on social media or used against me later. A city official I didn't recognize approached, wearing a reflective vest and carrying a clipboard. "Are either of you with the property management?" "I'm the HOA president," Patricia said quickly. "The building is condemned until structural repairs are completed and inspected," the official informed her. "You'll need to hire a structural engineer to assess the damage, then get bids for repairs. No one is allowed inside until it's cleared." Patricia's face went pale. "Condemned, but we have programmed scheduled events. Then you'll need to find alternative locations. This building is unsafe." The official handed her some paperwork and walked away. The crowd started murmuring. Someone asked Patricia what the board was going to do. Someone else asked how much the repairs would cost. Patricia looked overwhelmed, which I might have felt sorry about if she hadn't spent the last month making my life difficult. I pulled Marcus aside. "I'm leaving before this gets uglier. Call me if you hear anything important." "Will do." "For what it's worth, most people know this isn't your fault. Patricia's been on a warpath, but people see through her nonsense." I appreciated that, but as I drove home, I couldn't shake a sense of unease. A condemned community center was a huge problem. The repair costs would be massive, easily exceeding the HOA's reserves. There would probably be a special assessment, which meant every homeowner would be paying extra, and Patricia needed someone to blame. The next morning, I got my answer about what she'd do. A formal notice appeared in every homeowner's mailbox and email inbox, calling for an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the community center crisis and address concerns about contractor negligence. Dennis nearly had a heart attack when I showed him the notice. Contractor negligence. You weren't the contractor. You never did any work for them. This is libel. What do? You go to that meeting with me as your legal counsel, and you bring every single piece of documentation showing you were never hired, never did any work, and repeatedly offered to help at reasonable rates while the board refused. We're going to shut this down hard. The emergency meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. I spent Friday organizing all my documents, the emails, the rejected contract proposal, the communications with my insurance agent, even the camera footage of Patricia's visits to my house and the city inspector's visit. Everything. Saturday arrived cold and gray, matching my mood. Dennis met me at my house an hour before the meeting and we reviewed everything one more time. Let Patricia make her accusations first, Dennis advised. Don't interrupt, don't react. Let her dig her own hole. Then we'll present the facts calmly and professionally. We're not here to fight. We're here to set the record straight. What if people believe her anyway? Then we'll deal with that too. But I'm betting most of your neighbors are smarter than Patricia gives them credit for. The community center was obviously unusable, so the meeting was held at the neighborhood clubhouse near the pool. The room was packed. It looked like nearly every homeowner had shown up, sensing drama. Patricia called the meeting to order, but the usual formalities were skipped. She got right to the point. As you all know, the community center suffered catastrophic damage this week, she began. The roof collapsed due to ice dam damage that went unaddressed. This disaster could have been prevented if we'd received the community cooperation we needed. She went on for several minutes, painting a picture of a board doing their best with limited resources while selfish individuals refused to help. She never said my name, but she kept glancing in my direction, making it clear who she meant. The worst part, Patricia continued, is that we have a homeowner in this community who owns a roofing business, someone with the exact expertise we needed. But when we asked for help, he demanded excessive fees and unreasonable contract terms. When we couldn't meet his demands, he walked away, and now we're all facing the consequences. Cynthia nodded along, playing her part as Patricia's loyal supporter. The projected repair costs are between $80,000 and $100,000. This will require a special assessment of approximately $800 per household, money that could have been saved if certain people had been willing to help their neighbors. The room erupted in angry muttering. $800 was a significant hit for most families. Patricia let the noise build for a moment before holding up her hands. I know this is difficult, but we need to address how we got here and make sure it doesn't happen again. We need community members who will prioritize the neighborhood over personal profit. Dennis stood up. Excuse me, but before this goes any further, I need to correct several false statements that have been made. Patricia's eyes narrowed. And you are Dennis Fletcher, attorney at law, representing Peter Vaughn, who, contrary to what's been implied here, bears absolutely no responsibility for this situation. We didn't mention anyone by name, Cynthia said quickly. You didn't have to. You made it abundantly clear you were talking about my client, so let's address this directly. Dennis pulled out a folder of documents. Peter Vaughn offered to clear the ice dams in early February at half his normal professional rate. The board president initially demanded he do the work for free. When he declined and offered standard professional terms instead, he was subjected to harassment and retaliation. He proceeded to walk through everything: the bogus violation notice, the property inspection, the false city complaint. He had photos, dates, and documentation for all of it. Several homeowners looked shocked. Others looked angry, but not at me. Mr. Vaughn then offered the HOA an excellent deal on the repair work, Dennis continued. Actual material costs plus half his normal labor rate. This was significantly cheaper than any other quote the board received. The board accepted this offer at a general meeting in February. "We didn't accept," Patricia interrupted. "We agreed to consider it." The meeting minutes show a motion was made, seconded, and passed by majority vote, Dennis countered. Mr. Vaughn then provided a detailed quote and a standard contractor agreement. The board, specifically President Whitmore and board member Reed, rejected this agreement and sent back a revised contract that attempted to make Mr. Vaughn personally liable for any and all roof damage, including pre-existing damage, for the next 5 years. It also included language suggesting the work was a community service contribution rather than paid professional work. Dennis held up both contracts, showing the differences. "This is the contract Mr. Vaughn proposed, using standard industry terms. This is what the board countered with." No reasonable contractor would sign the second document. It was clearly designed to be rejected. Marcus stood up. "Patricia, is this true? You sent him that garbage contract. The board has a responsibility to protect HOA interests," Patricia said defensively. "We needed appropriate liability protections." "You needed a scapegoat," Dennis said bluntly. "When Mr. Vaughn refused to sign an unreasonable contract, you let the problem fester. Now the damage is catastrophic, and you're trying to blame the one person who actually tried to help. That's not just unprofessional, it's potentially libelous." The room erupted again, but this time the anger was directed at the board. Someone demanded to see both contracts. Someone else asked why the board didn't just use the reserve funds to hire a regular contractor when I backed out. Donald stood up, looking miserable. "I voted to accept Peter's offer and his standard contract. I was outvoted by Patricia and Cynthia. I tried to get them to hire someone else when Peter walked away, but Patricia insisted she could find a cheaper solution. She never did. I was trying to be fiscally responsible," Patricia insisted, her voice rising. "I was trying to save the community money. You were trying to force someone to work for free, and when that didn't work, you gambled with community property," I said, standing up to face her directly. "I offered you a fair deal, Patricia. You rejected it not because the terms were unreasonable, but because you couldn't stand the idea of paying me anything. You wanted to punish me for saying no to you, and now everyone here gets to pay the price." "That's not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It is true," Marcus said, "and I think we need a new board. Patricia, Cynthia, I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. Donald can stay because at least he tried to do the right thing." The motion was seconded immediately. Patricia tried to argue that this wasn't proper procedure, that you couldn't just call for votes like that, but the room was having none of it. Someone grabbed a copy of the HOA bylaws and found the relevant section about removing board members. The vote wasn't even close. Patricia and Cynthia were removed from the board by an overwhelming majority. Patricia left the meeting without another word, her face red with humiliation. Cynthia followed, muttering about ungrateful neighbors. An interim board was quickly assembled, with Marcus appointed as temporary president. His first act was to ask me about the current state of the damage and what it would take to fix it. Honestly, I need to get up there with a structural engineer before I can give you accurate numbers, I said. But based on what I saw, you're looking at significant repairs. Roof replacement for the damaged section, structural repairs, interior work to fix water damage, probably mold remediation. The 80 to 100,000 estimate isn't far off. The room groaned. Is there any way to bring that cost down? Someone asked. Not significantly. This is extensive damage. It's not just about the collapsed section. Water has been seeping into that building for weeks. There's likely damage we can't even see yet. If we'd hired you in February, what would it have cost to prevent this? My quote was $4,800. Even if you'd hired someone else at full rate, probably $8,000 to $12,000, this could have been prevented for a fraction of what it'll now cost to repair. Marcus scrubbed his face with his hands. Okay, well, we can't change the past. Peter, will you at least consult with the structural engineer? Help us understand what we're dealing with. I can do that. And Marcus, I'll give you the same rate I offered before. Half my normal rate for any work I end up doing. The offer was made in good faith to the community, not to Patricia personally. The relief in the room was palpable. It wouldn't solve the whole problem, but every bit helped. The meeting continued for another hour, working through immediate concerns and establishing how to handle the special assessment. I left feeling drained but vindicated. Dennis drove me home, both of us quiet until we pulled into my driveway. You handled that well, Dennis said. Stayed calm, stuck to facts, didn't get emotional. I was plenty emotional, I just didn't show it. That's the skill right there, he paused. For what it's worth, I think this is over now. With Patricia off the board, the harassment should stop. The community knows the truth. You came out of this looking good. I don't feel like I won anything. The community center is still wrecked. People are still going to pay hundreds of dollars in assessments. True. But that's not your fault, and now everyone knows it. Patricia made her choices. She's the one who has to live with the consequences. The next few weeks were busy. I worked with a structural engineer named Robert Kim to assess the full extent of the damage. It was as bad as I'd feared. The collapsed section needed complete rebuilding, but there was also extensive water damage throughout the building, compromised structural members, and active mold growth in several areas. The final estimate came to $94,000. The special assessment was set at $850 per household, payable over 3 months to ease the burden. Nobody was happy about it, but at least there was no more drama about whose fault it was. I did the roofing work myself, along with my crew. True to my word, I charged half my normal rate. It didn't make much of a dent in the overall cost, but it was something. The work took 3 weeks, cold, miserable March weather that tested my crew's patience. During that time, I barely saw Patricia. She'd apparently become a hermit, staying in her house and avoiding community events. Cynthia moved away entirely, selling her house and leaving the neighborhood. I felt a little bad about that until I reminded myself that they'd brought it on themselves. The community center reopened in late April, freshly repaired and looking better than it had in years. The new board threw a reopening celebration, trying to turn the whole situation into something positive. Kids ran around, families gathered, and there was a general sense of relief that the crisis was over. Marcus pulled me aside during the party. Hey, I wanted to thank you again for your help and for being reasonable about the rate. It's fine. I'm just glad it's fixed. I also wanted to tell you that we're implementing some changes. New budget oversight, better maintenance schedules, actual planning for things like ice dam prevention. We're not going to let something like this happen again. That's good to hear. And Peter, if you ever want to run for the board, I think you'd be great. We need people with common sense and professional expertise." I laughed. "Thanks, but I've had enough HOA drama to last me a lifetime. I'll stick to paying my fees and keeping my head down." "Can't blame you for that." The party wound down as evening approached. I was getting ready to leave when I noticed Patricia standing at the edge of the parking lot, looking at the repaired building. She seemed smaller somehow, less formidable than she'd been during her reign as HOA president. I almost walked to my truck without saying anything, but something made me change direction and approach her instead. "Patricia," she turned, startled. "Peter, I didn't think you'd want to talk to me. I probably shouldn't, but I figured we should clear the air since we're still neighbors." She was quiet for a moment, staring at the building. "I made mistakes. I can see that now. I was so focused on saving money, on proving I could manage the budget efficiently, that I lost sight of what actually mattered. You also made my life pretty difficult for a while there. I know. I'm sorry about that. I was angry that you wouldn't just help, and I let that anger drive my decisions. It was petty and unprofessional. It wasn't a great apology, but it seemed genuine. I wasn't trying to be difficult, Patricia. I was just trying to run my business professionally. I can't donate thousands of dollars in labor just because someone asks. That's not how it works. I understand that now. I just wish I'd understood it sooner before everything fell apart." We stood there awkwardly for another moment. Then Patricia turned to leave, pausing after a few steps. "For what it's worth, you did good work on the building. It looks great. Thanks." She walked away and I headed to my truck. Dennis had told me weeks ago that the best outcome would be everyone acknowledging what happened and moving forward. I hadn't believed him then, thinking the situation was too messed up for a clean resolution. But maybe he'd been right after all. Life in the neighborhood settled back into normalcy over the following months. The special assessment payments went through without too much grumbling. The new board actually seemed competent, holding regular meetings and communicating clearly about community issues. Marcus served out his term as temporary president and declined to run again, saying once was enough. I focused on my business, which was thriving. Word had gotten around about the HOA situation, and I'd actually gained several new clients from people who respected how I'd handled it. My crew stayed busy through spring and summer with various roofing projects across Vermont. In August, I got a call from Donald, who was still on the board. "Hey Peter, quick question. We're getting some quotes for painting the community center exterior. Would you be interested in bidding on it?" "Donald, I'm a roofer, not a painter." "Right, sorry, I knew that. I guess I just think of you as our go-to contractor now." I laughed. "I appreciate the thought, but painting isn't my specialty. I can recommend some good companies, though." "That would be helpful, thanks." It was a small interaction, but it illustrated how much things had changed. The HOA board now treated contractors with respect, paid fair rates, and didn't try to manipulate or coerce people into donating services. Radical concepts, apparently. Patricia kept to herself mostly, though I'd see her occasionally at neighborhood gatherings. We'd exchange polite nods but didn't really talk. Cynthia's house sold to a nice young couple with a baby, who seemed oblivious to all the drama that had preceded their arrival. That was probably for the best. The following winter came with more snow and cold, but this time the HOA was prepared. They'd budgeted for ice dam prevention, hired contractors early, and kept up with maintenance throughout the season. The community center roof stayed intact, no dramatic collapses or emergency meetings required. I cleared my own roof when needed and occasionally helped Marcus with his, just as a friendly neighbor gesture. But I made it clear from the start that I was helping as a friend, not as a contractor the HOA could call on whenever they wanted. He understood and respected the boundary. One evening in February, almost exactly a year after the whole situation had started, I ran into Marcus at a local bar. We grabbed a beer together and caught up on neighborhood gossip. "You know what's funny," Marcus said. "The whole community center disaster actually made the neighborhood better in some ways. People pay more attention to HOA business now. There's more accountability. The board can't just do whatever they want anymore. Silver lining, I guess. And Patricia moving away next month will help too." I nearly choked on my beer. "She's moving." "Yeah, didn't you hear? She and her husband are relocating to Florida. He got a job transfer, supposedly. But I think Patricia was looking for an excuse to leave after everything that happened. I can't say I'll miss her, but I don't wish her any harm either. Same. She made some bad decisions, but she wasn't evil, just stubborn and used to getting her way." Marcus took a drink. "Although between you and me, the neighborhood WhatsApp group has been a lot more pleasant since she stopped posting in it." We laughed about that and other things, talking until late. It felt good to have the whole situation firmly in the past, something we could joke about rather than stress over. The next week, I saw a moving truck at Patricia's house. I thought about stopping by to say goodbye but decided against it. We'd said what needed to be said months ago. There was no point rehashing it all now. The house sold quickly to a retired couple from Boston. They introduced themselves around the neighborhood and seemed genuinely nice. When they mentioned they needed some roof work done, I gave them my card and a fair quote. They hired me without any drama, paid on time, and even referred me to their friends who were also relocating to Vermont. That's how it should have been all along. Professional services, professional rates, mutual respect. Simple. In March, the HOA held their annual meeting to elect new board members and approve the budget. I attended, curious to see how things were being run now. The meeting was efficient and drama-free. The budget was reasonable and actually included proper maintenance reserves. The new board members seemed competent. At one point, someone made a joke about making sure we had enough in the budget for ice dam removal before certain people need to get involved again. Everyone laughed, including me. It was nice to have the whole thing become a shared community story rather than a bitter conflict. After the meeting, several neighbors thanked me again for how I'd handled everything. A few apologized for initially believing Patricia's version of events before the truth came out. I accepted their apologies and moved on. There was no point holding grudges. As I drove home that night, I reflected on everything that had happened. The situation had been frustrating and stressful while it was ongoing, but it had also taught me some valuable lessons about standing firm on professional boundaries, documenting everything, and not backing down when I knew I was right. It had also shown me which neighbors were reasonable people and which ones were just looking for drama. That knowledge would serve me well in the future. Most importantly, it had reinforced something I already knew but sometimes forgot. Professional services have value, and expecting people to donate their expertise for free isn't reasonable or fair. I'd built a successful business by doing quality work and charging fair prices. I wasn't going to compromise that for anyone, not even my HOA. The whole experience also made me grateful for friends like Dennis and Marcus, who'd had my back when things got difficult. And even for Donald, who'd been stuck in a tough position but had tried to do the right thing when it mattered. By the time April rolled around again, marking over a year since the community center had been repaired, the whole situation felt like ancient history. New dramas had emerged in the neighborhood, normal stuff like disputes over fence heights and complaints about dog barking. The kind of manageable problems that HOAs were actually designed to handle. I stayed busy with work, enjoying the spring weather and the uptick in business that came with it. My company had grown enough that I'd hired 2 additional crew members, and we were looking at expanding into commercial work beyond just residential projects. Life was good. The neighborhood was peaceful. The HOA was functional. And I'd successfully defended my professional boundaries without burning down relationships or losing my mind in the process. Sometimes people asked me for advice when they were having their own HOA problems. My answer was always the same. Document everything, know your rights, don't be afraid to get a lawyer involved if needed, and never compromise your professional standards just because someone tries to guilt-trip you. Most people found that advice helpful. Some thought I was being too rigid or harsh. But I'd lived through the alternative, and I knew which approach I preferred. As summer arrived and I found myself on various roofs across Vermont, enjoying the physical work and the satisfaction of solving problems, I'd occasionally think about those few months of HOA drama. It had been a pain at the time, but it had also been oddly empowering. I'd stood up for myself, weathered the storm, and come out the other side with my business and reputation intact. Patricia had tried to make me the villain, but the truth had won out in the end. The community had seen through her manipulation and made the right call. Justice wasn't always that clean or satisfying, so I appreciated it when it was. And the next time someone tried to pressure me into free work or unreasonable terms, whether it was an HOA or a regular client or anyone else, I'd know exactly how to handle it. Firmly, professionally, and with excellent documentation. Because at the end of the day, standing up for yourself and your business isn't selfish or unreasonable. It's necessary. And anyone who can't understand that probably isn't someone you want to work with anyway. The neighborhood moved on. I moved on. The community center stood repaired and properly maintained, a monument to what happens when people learn from their mistakes and do better. Every time I drove past it, I felt a little surge of satisfaction knowing I'd done good work there, been paid fairly for it, and helped resolve a crisis that could have been avoided entirely. But mostly, I was just glad to be done with HOA drama and back to the simple pleasure of running my business, helping my clients, and living my life without anyone demanding free labor at 7 in the morning. That was worth more than any amount of community, goodwill, or Patricia's approval ever could have been. And when the next winter came, bringing with it more snow and ice and the inevitable roof problems that Vermont winters bring, the HOA had a plan, a budget, and contractors lined up to handle it professionally. They called me for a quote on some preventive work. I gave them a fair price. They accepted without drama, and the work got done. That was how it should have been from the start. But sometimes people have to learn lessons the hard way, and neighborhoods have to go through difficult experiences to understand what really matters. In the end, everyone emerged a little wiser, a little more careful, and hopefully more respectful of professional boundaries and fair business practices. The community was stronger for having weathered the crisis, even if the path to get there had been rocky. As for me, I had great stories to tell at contractor meetups, a solid reputation in the community, and the knowledge that I could handle difficult situations without compromising my principles. That felt like winning, even if the victory had come with some stress and frustration along the way. Years later, when people asked about the most challenging client situation I'd ever faced, I'd tell them about the HOA that demanded free ice dam removal and the board president who couldn't handle being told no. I'd explain how standing firm on professional standards had initially made things worse before making them better, and how documentation and legal support had saved me from being scapegoated for someone else's bad decisions. The story usually got good reactions. Other contractors would nod knowingly, having faced similar situations themselves. Homeowners would look thoughtful, perhaps reconsidering their assumptions about what they could reasonably ask of service providers. And occasionally, HOA board members would look uncomfortable, hopefully questioning whether their own practices needed adjustment. But the best part was always the ending, when I'd explain how the situation eventually resolved with the difficult board members removed, the community learning from its mistakes, and professional relationships being restored on proper foundations. It proved that standing up for yourself could work out, even when it felt risky at the time. Because that's what this whole experience had really been about, not just ice dams or contracts or HOA politics. It was about knowing your worth, defending your boundaries, and refusing to be bullied or manipulated into undermining your own business. Those were lessons worth learning, even if the tuition had been steep, and the classroom had been my own neighborhood during one very difficult Vermont winter.